The other thing is, though, that he seems to be going after the foreign policy establishment in a big way, and which I really think needed to be done. Um, we've talked about the cutoff, the 90-day freeze in foreign aid, exceptions for Egypt and Israel, of course. But so far, he seems like he's sticking to his guns, in spite of all this, the cries of outrage, about the cutoff to Ukraine, because Ukraine is part of it. So far, he's not made an exception for it. Now, again, we really are talking about civilian aid. It's possible that some military aid might be affected, but nobody's come up with any example of it yet. I think it appears that the military aid is flowing just as before. But the civilian aid is significant. I mean, again, this is a country that's entirely dependent on Western largesse. It could not survive. The economy could not survive. So, they do need to get this funding just to continue to function as a nation. They can't just receive arms. They also have to feed people, pay salaries. The government will collapse if there isn't funding. And of course, they still are getting funding from Europe. There may be other sources within the U.S., so it's not over. But it must, as we're saying, there's no doubt that it's causing some panic, some very serious anxiety in Ukraine. And then I found this very interesting. I don't know if you know, but the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, gave an interview to Megyn Kelly. Mm-hmm. And I didn't listen to it directly, but I heard transcripts of it. And he sounded like he could have been on our show on Friday. I mean, right. Seriously, he was making the same points that I was making, saying that, hey, multipolarity is normal. It's, this unipolar thing that was a strange historical exception. And that's exactly what he said. He described, the unipolar moment as an anomaly. And now we're returning to, what's normal. And he actually used the word multipolarity. I was stunned because, Marco Rubio, of all people, he was just like the most establishment of establishment Republicans without really any evidence that he thought otherwise until this interview. And he was very much a neocon in his foreign policy orientation. I think you really have to struggle to find something that suggests otherwise in his past record. But here he was talking, and the thing is, he was speaking about it intelligently. I don't think he was just, mouthing some slogans. And you say, oh, well, maybe he's just doing this it's a dog whistle. Well, it would be more than a dog whistle, but he's trying to appeal to the base. The truth is, though we would like to believe otherwise, there isn't a significant foreign policy base in this country. Again, the polls show that there's like 4% of people decide their vote on the basis of foreign policy. I think it should be more because that's where the government can really make a difference. It's harder to steer the economy. It's easier to mess up the economy, but you can end ridiculous foreign adventures, and to the benefit of the U.S. and of the world. That's something the president really can do. So people should pay more attention to it, but generally they don't. So I don't think he had to do it. It was just something like, okay, yeah, we want to impress these certain people and get votes or whatever. I got the impression that he really believed what he was saying. He was speaking like somebody who really understood what was going on. And he talked about spheres of influence. And the one part, which is a kind of a regrettable tendency among a lot of Republicans who are otherwise, I think, show themselves to be realists. Maybe you could say they're still realists, but I still find it regrettable. There tends to be a lot of animosity towards China. You say, yeah, let's forget Ukraine, but let's shift over to China. And he did have some of that, but even there, he spoke differently about China than, let's say, Anthony Blinken would have. He said, they have their own interests and, they have their own sphere of influence. He admitted it. But then he spoke about, their malign behavior.
Right.
But at least there is a recognition of that. That's the thing with the neocons. They don't even recognize that other countries have their own interests. Everybody has to submit to the rules-based international or international rule-based order, right? Which is to say Western hegemony. So there was a dose of realism. I think the only part of it was where we saw no change is when he spoke about Iran and, described them as a rogue regime. And, they essentially he didn't hint at any change in policy with respect to Iran. But overall, it was a remarkable talk. And then, last again in the foreign policy sphere, we're seeing looks like USAID is in danger of actually being shut down. It's I think a lot of its employees have been maybe not dismissed, but have been told to, or have been put on leave. Right. Yeah, right. And there's talk about maybe, getting rid of this agency, which as I've said previously, I've seen every president, talk about ending, reducing government and ending agencies, and it just never happens. So we'll see if it really does happen, but it looks like he's quite serious about it. And they say, well, why go after USAID? Actually, in my mind, it was kind of an innocuous agency. I had a neighbor of ours. I don't know if you remember him, but he was had a background in lumber mills and the wood industry. He actually made some trips to Russia. This was in the early 2000s through USAID. And that's the thing they're supposed to do. It's supposed to be about economic development in foreign countries. So that was my thought of, my impression of USAID. But then I did some research and found out that actually they do a lot more than that. And they have actually funded many color revolutions. They are, it's not so much that they act directly, but they fund these other NGOs in countries like Georgia or Belarus or Russia earlier, Ukraine and so forth, and have, it seems to me it goes beyond their mandate, but that's what they were doing.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying the conversation so far. I promise to only take 1 minute of your time. If you're using AI, please consider checking out my website, Novlisky.io. Right now, we're in the middle of this AI arms race. Nobody knows what's the best AI to use. Yesterday was OpenAI, and everybody's talking about DeepSeek. This is great for us as consumers of AI, but what's not so great is having to jump from platform to platform. You don't want to have to sign up for a monthly subscription on OpenAI and then move over to Anthropic and then move over to DeepSeek. So what we built here at Novlisky is an AI hub. It allows you to access hundreds of AI models. We update them as soon as a new model comes out. It is integrated into our system, and you can use them all under one platform. And another thing that's so great about this website is that you can easily use multiple models at the same time to compare which is best for whatever use case. So, for example, I'm going to use Anthropic and GPT-4 at the same time. So I get side-by-side results. I use this in my work every single day. I think you'll find it incredibly useful. There's tons of customizations. We have an iOS and Android native app as well, so you have seamless synchronization across all devices. So please check it out. I think it's something you'll find incredibly useful. There are no subscription fees, no rate limits. I guarantee you it's going to save you money, and it's just going to keep you on top of all AI releases. The idea of Trump coming in and cleaning house and Elon Musk with the Department of Governmental Efficiency, that they'll want to do all these things, but then they'll meet this bureaucratic machine that won't allow it to happen. But what I'm kind of surprised about is that we're seeing, in my opinion, not a lot of resistance from the establishment. Right. Trump and Elon are coming in like a wrecking ball and just putting these agencies through the wood chipper, just shredding them and just really disrupting it. And it just seems like the deep state is just throwing up their hands, or they're in chaos. I don't know. Well, what's your take on that?
Yeah, no, I'm surprised by that too. I mean, he seems to really have put them on the back foot. The contrast with his first term, or the beginning of his first term, could not be more stark. You think about it, like from the beginning, or even before he took office, there's this constant, there's a constant stream of accusations hurled against him. Again, he was accused of being some kind of a Manchurian candidate, a puppet of the Russians, and it never ended, as you remember. It just was constant. They were always on the offensive, and they seemed to be very confident too that they were going to take him out. Now, then, of course, that did fail. But they just went on to other things. We had the lawfare, all the lawsuits that were brought against him. And there was a great deal of confidence that he would be in prison. And then, of course, during the leading up to the campaign and during the campaign, he was constantly accused of being, a fascist. The democracy itself was in danger. And now that he's in power and he's actually, wielding his executive power very aggressively, you get some of that language, but it just seems to be very muted. It's just like they almost seem to be stunned. They just don't. They're on the defensive, and I figured that they probably had some plan. There's going to be Russia hoax 2 or something, and maybe it'll emerge later. Maybe they're working on it, but they don't seem to have it now. It seemed like they didn't really have anything prepared. It seems like they had their plans A, B, C, but they didn't have a plan D. That's what we're looking at. I'm really quite amazed. Now it's very hard. I'm not going to make any predictions about how this is all going to end. It could end up very badly for Trump. I think the economy is, again, the main issue for most people. And again, I think these tariffs will have a negative effect. And then even absent the tariffs, like if, let's say, you lifted all the tariffs tomorrow, there's always a chance, because of these very severe economic imbalances that we have in this country, that we could go into a very severe recession. And there could be a major financial crisis, something similar to 2008, or even worse. And even if it would be unfair to blame Trump for that, because typically when you look at a recession or, a financial crisis, the seeds for that were sown, many years earlier. But it's just like whoever's in office at the time gets blamed. That's just a fact of U.S. politics. So he could, right now I think he's popular. People like to see a vigorous president, have a sense that somebody's actually doing something. But if the economy really craters, then they could all turn on him, and then the Democrats could come roaring back. It's just too early to say what's going to happen here.